Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this Raising Anchor 2026 virtual conference session by Hope Reform with one of my favorite people. Our relationship has just been deepening and getting more rich with each passing year as I work with my brother from another mother, the great Andy McDonnell from Studio 3 in Great Britain. Before we talk about our session and what we're going to discuss today about the workforce, let me talk a little bit about why we're here. Raising Anchor is a virtual conference that is administered by Hope Reform to raise awareness about particular problem sets that are occurring in the human services workforce. This year, the resilience and wellness of the workforce is the theme. Every one of our sessions this month, during the month of April, goes right to the heart of addressing the fatigue, the moral injury, the burnout that many of our workforces are reporting. And this virtual conference is in the service of helping people learn more about what they don't know is possible. There is more possible than one thinks. There are places in the world where ideas and initiatives are being implemented to combat the fatigue and the moral injury. And Studio 3 is certainly among a few of those organizations that are committed to that idea and that effort. Hope Reform is a nonprofit corporation and a 501c3 registered as a charity in the state of Washington. Hope Reform is an accreditation and certification organization serving agencies that provide crisis services. Very often those crisis services are administered by people who want to reach out for higher standards of care, higher standards of workforce satisfaction, and Hope Reform is here to provide not only the accreditation and certification of those agencies, but to provide the technical assistance to get there. And the reason that the technical assistance even exists is because of the expertise of our board of directors, who come from organizational leadership, human services, psychiatric care and services, psychiatric nursing, and let's say system level leadership that is decades in the making. So with that, it's been a great excitement of mine to offer this particular session to our viewers and supporters this week, and that is with Andy McDonnell. Andy is the director of Studio 3 in Great Britain. He is also the founder of what is known as the Low Arousal Approach in supporting people who live with intellectual and developmental disability. But the Low Arousal Approach is so universal that, in my view, it's something that should be everywhere. And the Low Arousal Approach, by its very nature, one would think its orientation is for the benefit of people served, and that is absolutely true. But what Andy is going to speak to today is how the Low Arousal Approach is really ideal for the workforce and the wellness of the workforce. And we'll get into, I'm sure, a number of exciting areas of that potential discussion and how broad it can be. Andy, welcome to Raising Anchor 2026. It's great to have you here.
Welcome, Andy, my brother from another mother. Is that what I'm supposed to say? But yep, it's an honor to be here, and obviously it's an honor to be invited by Hope Reform to do this. I mean, our collaborations are continuing to grow, and I think one of the arguments about that is because we both exist in this space where, when we talk about well-being and well-being models for people, staff, families, supporters, there's a lot of cliches used about the area. And what I hope to do today is to not just give people the usual kind of guff, for want of a better word, where people will talk about, here's my well-being circle. It's about, we all work with people and situations that can be frightening, scary, and highly stressful. And one of the things I really want to focus on today is, as a clinical psychologist and somebody who knows a little bit about stress research in this area, we're really bad at taking our own medicine. We know a lot of things to do about stress. I once worked with a manager who told me she was too stressed to do her stress management.
Oh my gosh!
And yes, and
You
and
know,
she was Irish, and she was Irish.
you you have a
I'm too stressed.
capacity you you have a capacity to get to the heart of the matter so quickly. Um, Let me start with this. You know, you've been
Hmm.
at this for some decades. You were with the National Health Service for years,
Yeah.
and now you're leading your own agency all over Great Britain in the power of this message of reducing demands and reducing arousal to bring about wellness. You've worked with a lot of workforces.
Yeah.
When we hear the workforce decry, um, I don't feel like my employer values me. The
Hmm.
demand is
Yeah.
so great. Safety, my safety is not important to the employer.
Hmm.
Where have you seen the root causes of those kinds of outward facing expressions? Because um,
Yeah.
if I had to guess, your observations and conclusions are not going to be dissimilar to what some of our other speakers have been talking about this month.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a look. It's a complicated question because human beings are complicated. Um, when I've seen lots of different jurisdictions. I do a lot of work in Europe, and I've seen the Canadian healthcare system up close in work, and we see this massive churn and turnover of staff. It's becoming more and more now than even in previous histories and times where people almost the workforce is changing and it's evolving. And in the care sector, that means people are almost expecting to stay 6 months in a service. What I would
Agreed.
I'd break them down into a few things, and this is not again to be pejorative or anything like that. Pay is important, but it's not the factor that actually really tips the balance here. I work, for example, in Sweden where healthcare pay sector pay is high, yet they still have similar problems. You know, I, you know, I'm going to name it. The Republic of Ireland in social care sector has got some of the highest rates of pay in Europe, and they have vacancies all over the place. And that's also why allowing free movement of people. There is there is an issue here that I believe that people should be paid well because they should be because it shows value and they deserve to be, but it's not the factor. I think I mentioned to you that one of my areas of research in the paper I published, which is around staff stress and behaviours of concern, and we focused on individual staff members who work one to one in crisis situations. They mostly work with adults with disabilities, autism, pretty scary situations at times.
Sure.
And my colleague Daniel Rippon from the University of Northumbria, he came up with a really great. We funded his PhD. If Daniel does see this, I accept Daniel. You did most of the work, yeah, and the heavy lifting. But he decided for his PhD, I'm going to not use questionnaires around staff stress. I'm actually going to interview people using grounded theory, qualitative methodology. I'm going to talk to them, and I'm going to run focus groups with these staff that we found for him at Studio 3, and they came from different healthcare sectors, some from the voluntary sector as well. But they all shared that they worked intensively with people one to one with that cliche term behaviors of concern. And when he produced this paper, which is published, and we can put it in the links afterwards, his number one stressor that staff reported, they were asked, what do you find most stressful when you're trying to do your job that's difficult enough? The thematic analysis, where you actually look at the themes of what people said and you cluster them, I can go into that in more detail. But number one in the theme was they found stressful the behavior of their colleagues,
Oh my gosh. This is like the
right?
expressed emotion paradigm research to
Yeah,
me. Please
yeah.
continue.
And it overlaps beautifully. So actually, when Daniel did his research, I wanted to keep it at arm's length because we were funding his PhD. And I was on a plane to Canada when he sent me a draft of this paper. And I rang him, he won't mind me saying this, saying the article, and he went, is there something wrong with it? I went, no, but no one will believe that I've had such a minimal approach with you. You've got number one as he said, well, I can't change what they said, Andy, but you've got number one, the relationships between staff was more stressful. People not following plans was a part of it. You write a plan, it's a work of fiction. Everyone goes in and says, we got a plan. And then people don't read it, or they say, my way's better. They found that highly stressful. They did
Yes.
value debriefing and emotional support, which was very variable amongst the people we did. They valued it. They didn't even say whether it worked or not. They just said it's nice when somebody just pays attention to you and acknowledges you're doing a good job, or somebody hits you, rather than stupid jokes.
Yeah.
It's like fall off the horse, oh, you get back on,
Right.
which is what I had when I was a young practitioner. Oh, you got
We
hit.
all
Yeah, yeah.
did.
No,
We all did. It was
thanks.
a yes.
Let's
And
turn
to
it into
some
a joke.
that cultural attribute still
Yeah.
exists today, Andy, to some degree.
But
Um,
also, it can help in some cultures, though. I mean, there are the stereotypes, and we know they're there.
right.
The Brits land and D-Day, and the first thing they do is make tea, right? And then they kind of say, "Oh, there's a lot of butts flying around. Let's not get too aroused about this."
Yeah.
That's why, respectfully, the British military has had a culture been quite effective over the years, because
Of humor.
it's
Yes.
a mindset, a bit of humor, which is very important for stress regulation. Um, Trying to be slow yourself down in even combat situations is kind of what they're taught, and it
Oh
is
my gosh. Yes.
part of the joke. I remember, he's alive today, the actor Michael Caine, which every one of your viewers will know. And what
Right.
people don't realise, he was actually a conscript in the Korean War, so he saw combat. And one of the things I remember him saying in an interview was, there's another bit that the British Army does. I'm trying to plug it, but he said around resilience. He said they give you old equipment on purpose. Yeah. He said they give you limited ammunition, saying don't be wasteful of that stuff. You haven't got a lot of that lying around. And he said he had a rifle issued to him, a Lee Enfield in Korea, and the serial number dated to 1916.
Oh my gosh.
And he said there's a culture of minimizing these things, but different cultures are very different again. We have this idea that culture will be a factor in workplace resilience. That's true. But when we're looking down into the micro details, there are leadership as a factor that affects all this. When you've got someone who says, hey, I'm sorry, but I give a damn. And I thought about this kind of when we're going to segue onto this, was that I remember thinking I was pretty good at debriefing, but you're only as good as the last time you did it.
That's
And
right.
I managed a team in Birmingham, and if they ever hear this, God love us, I'll be in trouble. And I remember I was going on all the time saying, you work in very difficult situations. You support your colleagues, right? You see them look out of sorts. You say, are you okay? Check them out. And there was one person I worked with, and I knew she'd had a really rough day. And I knew she wanted to talk to me, but I also needed to collect my kids from school. So I went, look, I care about you, and you
Yeah.
know that. But I've got to go and collect my kids. So I collect my kids, went home feeling guilty, and another colleague rang me up and he went, shame on you, right? She's now not feeling distressed. She's feeling really angry with you. So I had to go back into work. And what would have taken me half an hour to 45 minutes and say, leave the kids in the kindergarten, they'll be all right, actually turned into 4 hours of half it saying, sorry, you're
Oh
really
my
good.
gosh.
You're really good normally. And I said, well, I'm obviously having not the greatest day myself, really. And I'm really sorry. And I promise you, I've learned something here today, which is, yeah, the paradox, it wasn't a simple choice, but you'll remember this rather than the times that you said that I've been really supportive. And in the end, she said, no, I will. But, I'm angry with you. And I went, okay. And we worked through it. But it was a simple fact of not being there for someone when they were giving clues, in her case, quite big clues, because she was quite a demonstrative person that I need to talk
Yeah.
and I just need to get this out of my system. So our study said that that's important, and that's a no-brainer. But when you're looking at people's relationships, not with their clients, which is hugely important, but with their colleagues, the toxicity of it sometimes, where people have
Yes.
cliques, that's all in our simple study affecting workplace stress. Yeah, who you
Yes.
can rely on if there's a code white, code red, whatever color you want in any country, are they actually going to turn up on time, or are they drinking coffee? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
all of those
Andy,
things lead to that uncertainty.
I love it. I love what you're putting down here, and I want to ask you um, to elaborate to some extent that
Yeah.
when Studio 3 shows up, um, ostensibly on the basis of a need for the workforce to receive low arousal
Yeah.
training because there are events that drive a training need. It's almost like as an incidental occurrence, you begin to see the real intra workforce challenge of
Mm,
stress.
mm.
What is your general prescription for that when
Well,
you're witnessing staff members that are experiencing high stress level? Maybe the workforce leadership reveals to you that there have been a number of injuries, there have been
yeah,
a number of workforce related claims of interpersonal conflict. um, what's your general feedback or prescription to the leadership about those
yeah.
kinds of issues?
I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, I can think of lots of scenarios in my head actually, but we come in to put out the fire quite often, yeah. But the fire is mostly the source, isn't the client often. That's bad enough. It's this dysregulation that's around the client, and
Yep.
our approach now, we're not belligerent, but it's much more honest and transparent than it used to be. You'll sit people down and say, I know you're stressed, generally, to summarize, but 2/3 of the stress in this whole situation is down to you lot, not the client. And unless we cut the crap, for want of a better word, and
Yeah.
start saying, who do I feel safe with? Let's be honest. And that usually starts with debriefing. The number of situations my colleagues have gone into where the first thing to do is just sit and listen to people genuinely and say, look, we're here to help. But yeah, what's going on here in terms of, now there are characteristics of client, I'm not minimizing it, but we give them a message of hope, because what we're saying is, I can't fix someone's neurological condition. I can't fix someone's acquired brain injury. I can't make someone with dementia not have dementia and be shouting and screaming. But what I can do is say, if 60 to 70% of it is our lack of regulated response, then we need to get into that. And we try the basics, of giving people the idea that be more reflective yourself. We're triggering things all the time. You know, when in, I think I had to paraphrase the low arousal approach: reduce demands, be aware of your body and language, be aware of perceptions. But actually, the mantra is, when in doubt, shut your bloody mouth. Right?
Yeah.
If you're not sure, get nearer to the door. That's our
Yeah.
new kind of mantra. And the
Yeah.
thing is that when you're dealing with people that stress, I'm an optimist, because quite a lot of people, once they're given the chance to say, look, let's think now, the second phase is, what can we fix and what we can't fix? I can't get you a pay rise. I can't get this, but there may well be part of that team that's fragile enough that some people do need to move around. And that happens quite a lot. Not
Yep.
everyone. To say, look,
Yeah.
my bit with this all the time is that when we go into places like this, and you've done it too, you can almost smell the fear as well of
Oh
people.
my gosh. Yes.
And
Yes.
and emotions are, as we know, contagious from our understanding of neurobiology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happiness is contagious, positivity is contagious. Somebody who comes in and says, hey, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to spend the day with you and work alongside you, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll survive.
Yeah.
Uh, Bit of humor, but you're also trying to get people to regulate and model calm. And my original introduction to the low arousal approach, I now realize retrospectively, was some of the people I worked with in the early days, and I used to work with some pretty challenging individuals. Some of the staff that became my role models instinctively, they were almost calm, regulated people in general. They weren't saints, but they had this ability to just not give off energy to people in those situations, but
Y-
show they were listening to them. Like
yes. Yes.
rather than the people who really struggled with the talkers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And particularly when you're working with, my first jobs were people with disabilities who struggle to understand language anyway when they're stressed. And you've
Yeah.
got people then speaking faster to them. I remember my first job, a guy said, you need to raise your voice to take control of the situation. I then got a punch in the face from a client, quite hard. And, I had a martial arts background. My ego was damaged.
Right.
It took me a while to think, these guys are full of it. They don't know what they're talking about. They're making everything worse.
Yeah.
I even had an incident with somebody. We were one-to-one staffing in the early 80s in this place, and we did lots of good things, but we'd have day trips every Thursday. But it was for us. It wasn't just for the clients. We got
Right.
out of this environment. And some of those day trips, I mean, I still remember them now. There was a lot of humor. Um,
I
there was a
love
member
it.
of the there was a member of the public, and I told him, look, yeah, this guy is, he's fine. Can I buy him an ice cream? Like, no, not really. And then this guy bought him an ice cream. This young man, he was in a kind of a push chair type device. He had
Right.
very severe spinal damage. And I went, no, it's okay. And suddenly he thrust his ice cream towards the client. The next thing I saw, this man flying through the air. We were on a beach because the client had grabbed him, probably in panic.
Yeah.
The pushchair
And
went backward, and this guy
right.
went flying through the air, and he did actually quite a good break. Well, he must have been a wrestler or something, and he literally got up, didn't say a word, and ran off. And I still don't know to this day who the hell he was. He was trying to do something really decent and kind, and I remember thinking, I've got to write this. I've got to write this up, haven't I? So in those days, sorry to disappoint your audience, we took the decision, my colleague and I, that it never happened. So we
Oh,
decided, it was the 80s, maybe we just
yeah.
won't say that happened.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
he complains, then we'll get our notes straight. We never heard from the guy again. But the idea behind it was, unless for stress management, you can find releases for that, people end up, they're like pressure cookers. So we go in, phase one, we're trying to do that. Then we work alongside people. Now we're not, yeah, we have expertise, but what the bit of working on side people is to show and model calm, regulated behavior.
Oh,
And
I
that's not
love
always
it. I
easy.
love it.
And that's what we're trying to do. To regulate someone, co-regulation is everything. My colleague Gareth Morwood goes mad about this all the time, talking about,
He did
co-regulation.
such a beautiful job, Andy. And
Don't say that. He'll want more money. Don't
all
say
right.
that. No. He was awful.
But
But yeah,
he mentioned something I'm going to ask you to flesh out a little bit
yeah,
about
sure.
reflective practice. But I want, before we get there, I want to talk about the debriefing component. You and I
Yeah,
have a mutual friend in Dr. Kevin Huckshorn. And
yeah.
when
Oh
Kevin
yeah,
wrote the 6 core strategies, she included as the sixth and final strategy the need for debriefing.
yeah,
So, one of the things that I think, like you, I've been to a number of places in person and virtually throughout the West here, not only in the United States, but in Canada and elsewhere. And one of the observations that we have made is that debriefing, generally speaking, between staff members does not occur because the quality of whatever attempts they have made to do so has been very poor,
yeah,
where the debriefing results in arguments and
yeah.
negative
That
appraisals of one another. As you have encountered workforces that you have concluded need debriefing, what has been your approach to trying to engender a debriefing practice there?
I think one of the principles, and it's a really interesting point, is debriefing as an approach has become very systematized and very kind of tick box. Okay. And the basic simplicity of debriefing is you pick a colleague, right, to debrief to. Very simply, nothing fancy, listen to them, shut up, listen. Really simple, the basics I was taught as a young psychologist. Don't judge, yeah, don't argue, let them talk about their fears and their concerns. If you can summarize back to them what they've said, then you've been listening. And what's been happening over the years is it's become either too professionalized, so you need a therapist to debrief you only because they're the only
Right,
people
which is
qualified.
nonsense. Yeah.
Complete nonsense. Or, you know, what the team I used to manage in Birmingham, I was always proud of them, bunch of proud of them at the time. One thing that we had a rule on, even in the early days, was you have to debrief if you've had a critical incident, but you get to choose who you debrief to. So long as you don't keep picking the same person, all I want to know as your manager is you've done it. And if there's anything I can help with, fine.
Right.
Otherwise, just tell me you've done it. We even got to the stage where we didn't even have to know or be told which member of staff debriefed the person, so long as it happened. Has it happened? Yeah. Yeah. Because the problem with this is that in the advent of, careful, I say no, I won't, advent of kind of more behavioral analytic principles and approaches, we confuse debriefing with an investigation, almost like an interrogation.
Oh my
What did you
gosh.
do? Where did you stand? What did you do? Where did you stand? Why did you do that? People do it. They can't help themselves. Yeah.
Yes. You know,
So I,
Andy,
I,
I
I'll
went,
tell you this. I do an exercise on a training course where we get people to debrief, and they even struggle with that. Even to this day, you say, "Be quiet and just actively listen for 5 minutes." People struggle to do even that basic thing. But sorry, Andy, I
I
interrupted you.
can't thank you enough for stripping the meaningfulness of a good debriefing down to its essential.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was the Joint Commission on the Accreditation of Hospital Organizations, JCO.
Mm.
They released, because this problem also occurs, as you know, in healthcare.
Oh yeah.
And quite frankly, there was to some degree a large problem happening in med-surg units, medical surgical units, where people were dying in the OR. And I think after the expiration of the patient, there would be some extraordinary tension,
Yeah.
a need for actually what would be known as diffusing.
Mm.
But JCO released um, the tips of meaningful debriefing, and one of the principles that um, was published on it that I resonated with was that in a debriefing, individual appraisal of another's performance was not allowed. Only first person
Absolutely.
perspective. Only first person perspective. I felt afraid. I forgot this. I felt unsafe. I felt irritated. In other words, it was through the presentation of everyone's individual
Hmm.
experience that people were able to conceptualize something greater than what they originally concluded. There's a name for that principle. I forget what the
Well,
name of it
well,
is.
you had a lot of different things. You had things like Schwartz rounds that were introduced in places in the past that had that kind of guiding idea that, let's not talk about waste paper beans when we meet. Let's check out our colleagues about, and that was around bereavement. That was around those issues initially.
Right.
But I think there's a thing here as well, which is that when we're talking about a group or a team, to do say a group based debrief, something really quick with something, is really hard. It's not day to day. You're better sometimes to see people individually, not have the herd effect. Because when you get a lot of people who are frightened together, what you do is it amplifies that situation. You've got to be really skilled to keep
Yes.
people on track. And I think that, you know, our study, it was quite nice that people actually acknowledged that debriefing, their words, not ours, and emotional support was really high for them. Somebody just checking them out. But they also kind of hinted at examples where colleagues had, shall we say, not regulated themselves in those situations. You
Right.
know, there's a concept I mentioned to you. It came actually from psychiatry in the 70s called malignant alienation. And the idea of it is it's when therapists start to hate their clients. Right? No, I look, I kid you not. It's a real thing. I can give the audience references. And I remember thinking, yeah, every person I've supported, person centered Andy here, have I liked all of them? Some I haven't. I'll be honest. Some people grew on me like a fungus,
Yeah.
and some people you think, oh. Now, the idea behind it is that kind of alienation, usually caused by hostility, also occurs between staff.
Oh,
And you
you
can
bet it does. You bet it
and
does.
psychotherapists talk about projection. Look, hey, it's true. You can see people who can I give you a stereotype of someone that my very first job, and I'm pretty confident this person's dead now, so I think I can get away with this, right?
You're safe. Yeah.
So I think, well, if I'm not, I'm insured. Come for me, because I'm not going to name who you are. But my first job was in a hospital. I was qualified, and they had one ward for people with disabilities, and they had an enormous number of incidents. I mean, it was like a herd behavior in there. And early days, I had this inspired idea that there were 7 staff, not that many when you think about a 24/7 service and 20 people in there, and a manager. And I interviewed them all separately, and I asked them a question, which is, when the hits the fan, who's the person you rely on the most and who's the person you rely on least? And it gave me through what we call multi-dimensional stages, because I was pseudo-scientist in those days. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I managed to rank order the staff from their opinions. I was that pseudo-sciencey.
Right.
And of course, the manager of this entire place came 8th out of it. He was bottom.
Isn't
right?
that interesting?
So when I interviewed him, and he said, yeah, I said, who's number 1? And he said, it's obvious, it's me. I mean, I'm always having to sort the crap out with the staff here. I'm the one who comes in, sorts it out. Most of his team said he comes in, we've usually tried to calm the situation, and then he starts escalating. So in the end, I had to go back to my supervisor at the time. I said, I've got a bit of an ethical problem. I haven't really given him the full report back yet for feedback. And my supervisor was a great colleague. He went, look, there's no point. You've done this. You've opened Pandora's box. It's your responsibility.
Right. It's here. Yes.
And all I'll say is the look of shock on that man's face, right? He was there with a jacket on, pipe smoker in his 50s, saying, really? And what surprised me was he was genuinely surprised, Andy. And actually, his reaction meant, why don't you go and have this conversation with your colleagues? Yeah. And he did. And I thought at the time, God, this works easy. Look how easy it worked. Now I tried it on other times and thought, this is just blowing up a bomb.
Yeah.
But what it gave me was that when we're looking at people's stress in those situations, this guy thought he was the most regulated person there. Yeah. But actually what his colleagues saw was this guy running around like a headless chicken, raising his voice, meaning well. I mean, he's not a monster. And suddenly they'd be sitting in that situation. I had it myself in another place I worked in as a young assistant psychologist when somebody came to help me. I was supposed to be buying time on this ward. It was like, I'm not funny, it was like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. All right. I mean, it was, the staff didn't want us there, most of them. I'm there to cover a shift as a young assistant. Who the hell are you? Was almost the attitude. And one of the clients just escalated really rapidly. And basically I wanted to manage him on my own. And eventually I kind of sat him in a chair, not too forcefully, and he was starting to calm down. And then a young member of staff, well-intentioned, came charging in, yeah, and she tried to help. And as she leant over, he went to bite her breast.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember looking, and as I pushed her out of the way, I felt that hot, tingly sensation of he's bitten me. And even in those days, I'm always a regulated person in those situations.
Right.
We calmed him down, made him a cup of tea. She was okay. And she went, Andy, you're bleeding. I looked at my arm and thought,
yeah,
I'm bleeding quite a lot. Okay. Even in those days, I did the classic thing, like anyone who knows the film Monty Python, yeah, and the Holy Grail.
Yes.
'Tis just a scratch, sir. I minimized it. I've had worse.
Right.
I got outside and went, Jesus, this hurts. and I'm this martial arts expert. I'm humiliated again. Yeah.
Oh.
And then I got angry that evening, and I said to my fiance at the time, and now wife, Denise, I'm really annoyed at her. She said, why? I went, because she caused that. And she went,
right. This was completely avoidable.
She was trying to help you. And I don't think you should be angry about that. She said, I think you're angry with yourself for getting bitten, aren't you? And I went, yeah, it's a bit of that in there, I'm God's gift to movement skills. But the thing about it in the end of it was, I was fine. And then the next day, the manager, and this is relevant to leadership, who was useless, and I'll use that word, absolutely useless, he called me into his office. He said, we need to check because he may be a hepatitis B carrier. Now, intellectually, I knew there were 4 people with Hep B in the hospital, and this guy wasn't one of them. but my brain went into overtime. And I remember being told, you can have the test. And even in those days, if it's clear, they won't contact you. If it's positive, they will quite quickly.
Right, 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 right.
I remember sitting there near the airplane. I just got to a clinical psychology doctorate. And I remember sitting there feeling sorry for me. Life's really good. I'm on the right track. I'm about to leave this place. I'm about to do the career I've chosen. And now I'm going to get some horrible disease because of this.
Yeah,
A week went by. I rang up and they said, look, a week you're pretty safe. No one gets, honestly, unless there's an error. What do you mean an error?
yeah,
If there's an error, obviously, that can happen. I thought, but the thing that got me most about it was that manager had a phrase that I still remember now. We had a meeting about incidents. This is after this, and he said,
right.
"I have told every person here, this is more dangerous than any combat zone you can think of. You could get killed working here. I'm not safe. My staff are not safe." And I remember thinking, this is just out of control because actually I saw a lot of good practice there as well. But the fish rots from the head. I remember Kevin Huxhawn having this chat with her years ago. Actually, you mentioned Kevin about the leadership thing. You can have the most
Well, yeah,
fantastic staff team, but
she made that the first of the 6 core strategies for a
yeah,
reason. But this is a
and
good
that's
segue.
exactly what she meant.
Yeah. Andy, this is a good
Yeah.
segue into your thoughts on reflective practice because the absence
Hmm.
of reflective practice is, I think, at the source of many of these workforce challenges that we have been, let's say, conditioned to be interested or attracted to things external rather than a reflective
Yeah.
internal appraisal. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's become the cornerstone of not just our work, but most people's work. We look out. It's like we got a camera looking for the cause, but it can't
Yeah.
be us. That comes also, and I'm going to say it from behavioral psychology baloney, which we've been fed since Second World War plus, that
Right.
we're like passive observers of of a situation. I'm not an observer. I'm a participant. So
Yes.
that this idea that the client, I remember, it's almost comical. You'll hear things. I used to read incident forms that said, happened out of the blue. Nothing happened. Yeah. The client just attacked me for no reason at all. Yet I talked to a colleague who was there and they went, well, he went up to him. Yeah. He joked to him. The client didn't understand that. The client said, you're making fun of me. And then he hit him. But the
Yeah.
incident form didn't say that. So the idea of we are quite emotionally, and the phrase I would use, illiterate. It's about emotional literacy. Being aware isn't just mindfulness and hugging trees. It's actually just the basics of accepting that I'm connected with these situations. I have to look at my own thing. So it's the whole thing. To thine own self be true.
Oh,
Honesty
I love it. I
starts with
love
that.
it.
And you have to do that. And it's a skill. Not everyone can do it, but many people can. You think of and I start staff by saying, think of someone that you really screwed up. Yeah, in terms of what you did, um, and analyze that and think about how you're not going to do that again. That's reflective practice. And I always give people real examples. Hey, the whole point about this is that we look outwards, we don't look inwards. And if you do say look inwards, they think you're some rabid, you know, monk, Buddhist sitting on a rock. There's a stereotype, with actually it's just common sense.
I love that you're talking about emotional literacy
Oh,
and
and illiteracy as well.
yes,
If there's
and illiteracy and the fact that um, we have a a phenomena that's occurring in the technical age now, the
mm,
technology age,
yeah,
actually, particularly with our social media feeds and the attention
yeah,
economy and the reinforcement of this kind of antithetical approach to
yeah,
stoicism. Um, whereas what we're proposing here is not necessarily that we are philosopher monks, but rather we do have a responsibility
mm,
to appraise our own
well,
emotional state and our own behavior And that I think there's a fear very often among staff of trusting people they don't know well to
Absolutely.
appraise them. So it's much more convenient to
And
blame or look for external causation.
that's absolutely right. And it's this, we struggle all the time with this. Everyone does with, are we saints or sinners? I think the thing that I remember when I was trained in cognitive therapy years ago, I didn't love all of it, but what I did love was this phrase, we're fallible human beings.
Yeah.
Now, give
Yeah.
permission to be people to be fallible. Now with hindsight, I'm thinking, hey, I put that in the low arousal approach, didn't I? Because that's the point. You need to to build trust. You need to say to someone, hey, look, we're not looking for perfection here, right? I remember when I was a crazy young psychologist, trust me, I was. Uh, there was a phase where I drank the Kool-Aid and believed that people like B.F. Skinner was a god. Now I
Yeah.
realize I was unwell.
Yeah.
The world just wasn't that simple. And get this, Andy, people aren't rats running around in a cage. So
Oh my
what I remember
gosh.
thinking was, how can I build up trust with people to trust me enough to say that? And the way you do that is you model it, and you model reflection, you model the fallibility, you model that, and you say to people, hey, I've done really great things with people. The second question isn't tell me when you've screwed up. Tell me when you've de-escalated something really well. And people struggle with that. And then they kind of sometimes get an answer. So this mindset of feeling like they're going to be blamed. And sometimes, look, I've worked with abusive practices, that, been on TV, documentaries. There
Yes.
are some people in our field who are, let's be honest, monsters, right? They are the kind of people, small minority of staff, who are not fit to work in human services emotionally. That's a tiny element of people. They're often ringleaders when you look at abuse inquiries. They're the people who kind of take pleasure in the suffering of others. I mean, I think I said to this one before, the German language has the word Schadenfreude, which actually means taking pleasure in the suffering of others. I don't know if I
Yeah.
told you this. And I was working in Germany. Actually, I will be careful what I say here. Many years ago, and a German colleague whose English was phenomenal. Yeah, she was a psychologist. Actually, I'll say that. And she was a translator, amazing woman. And she said, what's the English word for Schadenfreude? And I said, there isn't one. Only you guys would come up with that.
Yeah.
Now, I was lucky that she had a great sense of humor, taking that risk. But what she meant by that was there is this notion of competence, blame, yeah, and there's also this bit of satisfaction to see how someone else hurt from some people. I told you
Yeah.
so. I had that with somebody once said it to me. I got hit across the face and I went, told you so. Yeah, thank you for that. Is all I said.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Yeah, yeah. I don't think I want you backing me up the next time that happens, because one of the reasons why I got punched in the face is because you were asleep at the wheel, pal. The
Yeah.
idea behind this is we have to give, in reflection, permission for people to not just reflect on the negatives, what's broken, the critical incidents. You need to get people doing positive recording and analyzing the fantastic day that someone's had and saying, reflect on this. Why was
Right.
this so good today? Was it because of the weather? Why don't you think about what it is you did today that made your connection with that client really hum? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And to
that
celebrate that, to catch people doing things right, you
And
know?
it's really interesting. You can get people recording negative things accurately. You can't get them to sustain positive recording.
Oh, I
It's not.
couldn't agree more. I think
It's
it's
like it's not in our.
universal.
It's not in our DNA. Do you know the word I really hate the most? And I know it's a North American phrase. Let's record a near miss. My answer: let's not.
Yeah.
A near miss is also successful diversion. Yeah, it could be.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we learn from
I
near
love
misses.
the language you're using. I love the language you're using here, Andy, because I think that workforces that are fatigued,
Yeah.
where there is high stress, there is almost always a report that they are afraid of doing something wrong within the
Yeah.
employer, within the agency. They're
Yeah.
terrified of doing something wrong. It's
Yeah.
interfering with their decision making. which also has negative outcomes attached to it. And you know, with you in particular, you and I have, and along with Tony and other people, are very interested in the kind of training that our workforces are getting in crisis de-escalation.
Yeah.
And maybe it's worth mentioning and asking this of you as a global expert on it. What are your thoughts on the implications of restraint training, like complex motor skill training, to a
Mm,
workforce that has a much larger
yeah.
responsibility anchored in their policy and in their ethos to avoid that?
Let me answer it this way. When you were young, when you were a kid, did you ever go and see a proper magician? You know, all the tricks and yeah.
Yeah,
These training courses are based on trickery. I will show you. Look at that. I'll show you a move that you will forget in a nanosecond. And when your amygdala overheats,
yeah,
you will fight, flight, freeze. You will not know what you're doing most of the time. And this is part of it's a con, and I'll use that word in the whole training industry, which is, and some people know it's con, some people don't. They're genuine people. They think they're doing good. Because the more you teach those skills, the more likely it is that someone's going to use them badly. And if they use them badly, people are going to get hurt. So to me, these are things that to train people, I'm not saying I can, some of your listeners now will be going, oh, some pacifist, he says train them in nothing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we're talking about physical motor movements. Yeah. I mean, in Studio 3, we teach things, I think I said to you in our system, but we've simplified the program over 20 years and it's still not simple enough yet because
yeah,
human body reacts very weirdly to these things. You know, it's the startle response, jump start, startle response. You know, some people just shut down in those situations. And I think the
yes,
culture is the other way around. I believe that there is a place for restraint, but I'm a minimalist. You don't start with it and train an entire workforce in combat skills. You train them in de escalation. You say, which areas do I need to do more advanced skills? And you need more time to do that. So rather than this blanket approach that everyone gets a few days of, you know, these skills, if you scale it, you're still having fewer days needed, and you can have the spare days to say, do you know what, we'll put someone into work alongside people as a coach rather than death by PowerPoint. You know, get the gym.
oh,
Let
I
me start
love
with my
what you're
people. You
like.
know this.
I love it.
I
It
would
you know
my
what, Andy,
it's-
you
to
have
this
such
to this
courage.
day, but to this day, people go on the training courses and they get gym mats out. You don't have a gym mat in a care home. What are you going to do? Say, excuse me, will you stop biting me for the moment because I need to put this mat down? Because the technique I've taught is so unsafe that I can only do it on a soft area. And sorry, I can't do this technique now, but I'll try because we're on a sidewalk. The
There's
mindset of these
yes,
things is
there's a
we want to make
snake
people more
oil
confident.
quality, Andy. There's a snake oil quality to
Yeah,
leading
absolutely.
workforce members to believe that the confidence that you're feeling in this training room from this complex motor skill is transferable to the workplace. And I think what happens, because you and
Yeah,
I have certainly seen it, we have friends that have seen it. People have gone through some of these trainings. They derive an experience from that. I know how to get out of a wrist grab. I know how to get out of a
mhm,
hair pull. Then something will befall them, and like you said, either the technique doesn't show up, or if the technique does show up and is ineffective, now someone has invested in a belief that was proven to be false. So they feel isolated, misled, alone, any number of negative outcomes attached to that.
yeah. I think I was talking about that yesterday in Sweden. There, see the way I weave that in. My life is terrible. Beautiful town, Lund, and we were talking about this same point. People in the industry who are, and then there are snake salesmen. There are snake oil salesmen as well, and they know
Yes,
they're snake oil salesmen, and they're there to sell a lie a lot of the time. Yeah.
yes,
I think we've got a fundamental problem in teaching the wrong. if you say training is limited, which it is, it's resource driven. How much time can you allocate to it?
Right.
Training people in de-escalation excellence is where it is. We both agree with that. It doesn't mean to say we
Yeah.
don't teach the other things, but actually that is then genuinely the last result. There's a colleague of mine, Roy DeVoe, over here. He's interesting guy, practitioner, academic, and Roy DeVoe and I wrote a simple paper years ago saying that the last result always becomes the first result. You're taught these
Yeah.
skills and you're told don't use them unless you've used out any other options. Frighten people. What do? If they don't run off, they go and try and use these skills. And a lot of our expose documentaries are about the power of them, because the other side of it is when people learn to do these quite well, then they become supremely powerful, right? Let's
Yeah.
gather the staff now and we'll take this guy down. Takedowns, for God's sake. We're not doing MMA.
Yeah. It's
It's the logic. So to me, we've got a lot of training programs that are pseudo martial arts, and they're bad pseudo martial arts. They don't
yeah,
even have
bad kung
enough
fu you
practice to
call it. Bad kung fu. Yes.
teach anything. Very well. I think I upset someone on your last thing with that one person beer. The bad kung fu is what we call it all the time. Yeah. Let me show you another trick today. And the trick today is grab me by the hands and I'll show you how to get out of it. Hit
Yeah.
me in a linear way like we
Yeah.
practiced. I'll prepare myself, because that's how things happen. And I
Oh
think
my
the point
gosh.
about it
It's
is
so
if
oh,
if if you're aware of your bodies, you know this. The best thing to teach people is to just move slowly and move. Don't be stationary. It sounds really fundamental. It's in all kind of martial arts, from Tibetan monks to boxers. That's that notion is not there because it's come from the self-defense culture, right? And that's based on here's a few tricks. I
right.
remember when I used to teach martial art, somebody said, "We want you to do self-defense classes." And I did for a bit, and then thought, well, why am I doing this? If you want to learn, come to a proper class, train,
Yeah.
learn a bit of muscle memory. What am I going to show you? A few gimmicks. And actually, the organization I was involved in, I tried to ban instructors teaching self-defense training. And of course, a lot of them would say, well, actually, we make a bit of
Yeah,
money
what are
on
you
this stuff,
doing, McDonnell? Yeah.
Yeah, we're making a bit of money and we're not doing any harm. I said, I think you might be doing harm, is what I said to one guy, because that person that you're tricking. And I didn't know we were going to hear that. Well, I'll say this thing to you as well. It's a colleague of mine who's actually still in Studio 3 now. And he was one of my, also in the bad old days, martial arts instructors. Tiny little guy. Can't name him for legal reasons. He's called David Walker. You'll get him on one of your shows soon. One of the most laid back people you'd ever come across. And the kind of guy you'd always want in a crisis. He's always calm. He's always regular. We did a walking challenge many years ago when I was massively overweight, and we went up 3 little bumps that you wouldn't even call mountains in
Sure.
30
Yeah.
hours.
Well, I live near the
And,
Cascade
yeah,
volcanoes.
but
Yeah.
you live near proper mountains, but these are only
Yeah.
like 1,000 meters tall. And he got me round. I was bitching and moaning on every single mountain, and Dave was just calmly going one thing. One of the things that Dave, when we used to learn about our martial arts experiences, was that he was just someone who was, and still is, almost fearless.
Yeah.
Now, some people can put on an act. Dave had, and
Yeah.
there's other
And then
good ones.
some people have different thresholds. Yeah.
They'd be just like, what would it take to really? I remember he said to me once, "Oh, I got really angry with someone." I went, "What does that look like?" He went, "What?" I said, "What does that look like?" Because I'm not sure we're on the same wavelength here. But when he used to teach a martial art, he could also flip the switch, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm talking about Dave, and I'm going to get this in because he's going to retire soon, in the next few years. So I'm a young person studying at Plymouth Polytechnic. I go to my jiu-jitsu club 10 hours a week. And he comes up with this amazing idea. You can have free lessons if you come and help out at his women's self-defense class, right?
Oh my gosh.
And I still remember it now. And I want to get this out for posterity somewhere. And I'm sorry, Dave. I remember we would turn up and basically we would be the demonstration dummies at the end of this course where he had built people up. He taught them horrendously violent techniques. And I'm going to say this to you. He said, okay, Andy, go and grab this woman. And I really wanted you to scare her. So I went, charging over. And this young woman, student, poked me in the eyes with the fingers. I'm like, one of my friends got chopped across the throat.
Oh,
And we're sitting there, and we're sitting there at the end of it. And he went, wasn't that great? And everyone felt confident. And this young woman came up to me and she went, I'm sorry, did I hurt you? I went, a bit, actually. We all clubbed together and told him we'd rather pay for our extra class than do this again. Yeah.
oh
And
my
he went,
gosh.
I said, there is no way. God
Yeah.
knows what you're going to teach them next. We don't know what's coming, which is simulating real life. And I remember another friend of mine, bless him, he got literally clawed. And you're teaching people is save your life. The simulations were too real. And actually, even the conclusion was I can teach somebody a limited skill and get a note out of a violin, but they can't play a concerto, right?
Right. They're not going to
And
play, the Chaconne by Bach.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, they're definitely not. Or they might think they are playing it, but no one else in the world says
Right.
that's that. Okay?
Right.
So this industry is part of that, and it's part of the stress for the workforce. For me, it's really, really straightforward, which is we know people like this stuff. Instinctively, they feel safer if they've been on a training course. They get the high, the buzz. And that's
Right.
a problem because we're going to need to replace that over the years with something that makes them feel confident, but maybe not in the same way. And that's leadership. That's reflective practice to me. That is getting people emotionally literate and saying, do you know what? If I'm calm in these situations, mostly I'm not going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And there's a point I wanted to make to you, Andy, on this because we were talking about this well-being approach. When I said to you about the research about us not being good at taking our own psychological medicine, yeah,
Yeah.
let me let me ask you. Well, we'll have this conversation. Cardiac exercise. Do we agree that's good for your physical health and your emotional
Sure.
health and well-being for most people, whatever setting? Yeah,
Unequivocally.
we
Yes.
agree. Yeah, diet and nutrition. Diet and nutrition. Yeah, yeah. Would you say diet and nutrition is important? Yeah.
Of course.
Having a sense of taking time and personal time. We can list all these. Yeah. When you look at the workforces we work with, we get back to my person at the beginning. I haven't got the time to do all of that.
Right.
I genuinely think we don't want to create the same single route. I think I said to you this before. I have a friend in Sweden. I saw him yesterday, and he loves fishing to regulate. I tried it. It's not for me, but for him, it works. Yeah. However, for other people, there's an individual set of coping strategies. Because if we talk about stress, we've always got to talk about coping strategies,
Sure.
and you've got to have some. And when I've looked at some of the people I work with, they just don't practice any of the things. I mean, I go to the gym a few times a week. I'm middle class. I pay someone to push me harder because I'm lazy. I know if I just go on my own, I'll put the treadmill on about 1 mile an hour. Yeah. I remember watching someone in the gym once who was eating while he was on a treadmill. He was eating a sandwich. And you're thinking, I don't think
Oh
you've
my
got this.
gosh.
I don't think you've got this quite right. Mindfulness and meditation for some people is a godsend. For other people, they can't do it. But we've got a
Yes.
menu. We've got a menu of techniques here. And if you said, let's look at a workforce, and we're starting to do this more now, let's get them, if we get them to some of them, maybe half the workforce to practice those things better, how to switch off from work, they're going to be more regulated. And I'm interested. I'm just reading a book at the moment called about Ishigai, which is this idea in Japanese culture about well-being and wellness. Why people live to
Yes.
197 or whatever it is in
Yeah,
Okinawa.
they do. Yeah, they live
And
very
it's
long there.
but it's not just that. An Ishigai translates to your purpose, your meaning. And it sounds a bit.
Yes.
I don't want to get too kind of airy fairy, but what it means for me is that regulated people have fulfilled lives. You don't have to be rich to have that, but you're doing things that you enjoy. I was talking to a colleague recently who they have a hobby and they're part of the scout and guide movement in the UK and around the world, but it's their different world from their stressful job. They've
Yes.
created their space where in that world, I don't have to think about work. Our workforce now, and I really worry about this, are addicted to their phones, right? And their sense of this comes from phone addiction. I mean, it's not just for kids anymore in schools. You got to turn these things here are the new heroin. They're the new crack
Yes.
cocaine.
Yes.
We need them, but we need to use them sparingly because people don't switch off mentally. And I'm seeing people now, if you want to play a computer game, good. Tune whatever tunes out and gives you a sense of flow, as Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called it. Flow is good. Flow is when you're literally tuning out from all around you by a repetitive act. You could be running, you could be playing chess, you could be reading a book. Yeah. I admire the people who can do mindfulness and completely tune out. I struggle with it, but others can do it. But if our workforce either thinks that's a joke or thinks that that's not going to work for them, everyone needs to have their stress signature and something they do to switch off. And I think that's where we need to be putting more of our energies in the future. Yeah, making people more emotionally aware. I'm not talking, and you know this, Andy, I'm not talking about people walking around in caftans, and hoodies and California style, that kind of mentality. It's deeper than that. It's about after self-reflection comes self-care,
Yeah.
right? And if you can't care for yourself, I mean, there are other strategies. To the Studio 3 trainers, if they see this in Sweden yesterday, why did you give me that much alcohol? Why did you force it down my neck? Okay. There was no need to do that. Yes, it looked like I was doing it of my own free will, but it wasn't the booze. We were having fun last night because I do believe it's part of me. Humor is everything.
Oh
Humor
my gosh.
dissipates
Well,
a
it
lot.
it comes through in every single conversation we have. It comes through every time we're on some uh, broadcast of some type. That's why I didn't even want to touch slide deck today. I just have to wind
Well,
you up and send you in a direction.
well,
And it's funny.
hey, but it is, but it's also, we also have to be able to laugh at ourselves. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I do it all the time. Hey, you're a professor. Yeah, yeah, at a kind of provincial university. I'll do things to take all that down all the time. But actually,
Yes.
also, you must be able to make fun of yourself. It doesn't make you perfect. You know,
Yeah.
I worry that these things we're making in the future, that my adult kids will see this because they are brutal. Yeah,
Yeah.
Dad, the low arousal man. Yeah, we've seen him lose it in a car park with somebody. Yeah, the low arousal guy again.
I know. We have to
And
live up to this persona. I know.
no,
It's
no, we
awful.
don't. We don't. There's a colleague of mine. He's retired now, called David Petoniak, and he's a great humanist. He lives in Vermont, state of Vermont. I learned a lot from him. And David is a kind of a storyteller, yeah, in how his approach to human services and work. And he's a kind person. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you something else. He's kind 24 hours a day. I remember years ago, bless him, we were doing some work together in Ireland, and it's just constant with him. And we got to the
Yeah.
end of the week, and he said, "Hey, brother, that was a good day, and I think we're doing well. And I've just been over here, and I've been listening to this person." I went, "Can you just stop? I'm worn out. You're too damn kind.
Yeah.
Let's have the night off." And he went, "But Andy, we're 24/7 people. We can't be having the night off from our kindness." I said, "That's possibly one of my coping strategies. I switch off. All right, I switch the world off, and I think people like him." When I meet them, when you meet them, you just know they're not putting it on. It's not an act. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
someone who could connect with anyone on this planet. And I'll say that about him now. He was one of the best connectors I've ever worked with, ever. But the funny thing was, when we did our stuff together, there was a lot of humor. I miss it.
Yeah.
People were laughing in their seats. He had this kind of dry Woody Allen style. Yeah, I played to the audience. We had fun. But the learning was, you can't really do this work if you're flapping all around all the place. Yeah. He said, "I don't need any
Yeah.
of that training. Do you think I need some?" And I went, "You've got the training. What the hell are you saying that to me for? You
Yeah.
are basically low arousal personified in a tight box that I wish I could sell. Put your DNA into a liquidizer and sprill it as some kind of odor or perfume to people. Who knows? Maybe that's the future. We could liquidize some of these really great staff and turn them into perfume." Yeah. Here's your low arousal spray.
The low arousal atomizer.
Actually, Andy, let's make a mental note to look into that, the pair of us. Okay, there
Yeah,
could be
fair
something in
enough.
there.
Fair
There could
enough.
really be. Yeah, I'm sure there's somebody in South America who could produce it for us, but very cheap, no bucks.
Yeah,
But the point about a lot of this is we know about well-being. People talk about well-being. I just want to say this as well. And we know there's spiritual, there's so many different forms of well-being: physical well-being, spiritual well-being,
sure.
emotional well-being. But generally, when we're talking about resilience, and it is becoming more pejorative, people talk about their well-being. It's I think we should be teaching people this younger in schools. I mean, I know, look, there are people now that think, we should teach mindfulness to every kid in school. I don't object to that. I just think we should be teaching an array of different skills, like a menu of what people can use to
I
switch on and
couldn't
switch
agree
off.
more. I couldn't
You
agree
know,
more, particularly as the workforce becomes younger and younger.
yeah,
These things that we took for granted in our generation
yeah.
are just very often not present.
And
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 it- and this other thing about mindfulness for me is it's about to be it's about to be in the moment with your attention. If you're in the moment with your attention, you're less likely to get hurt in conflict situations.
that's right.
If you're the person who can think in a conflict situation, this
Yes.
is can think them talk their way out of it. The person who's literally melting down and mimicking that, often those are the people get hurt. Now, it
Right.
doesn't mean to say how do we teach that to people. And I think there are some elements we do it that we can teach that. But for a stressed workforce, openness, communication, honesty, honesty about relationships is hard, but that should come from the leaders. It should not just, it's got to ooze down. And it oozes down by people saying, we're not going to fire you. Although, if you
Right.
do really terrible things, you will get fired.
Right.
Um, we'll accept fallibility, for want of a better word,
Oh, I love
not,
it.
not infallibility. I mean, some of the people you see now in our workforce, they say, well, our workforce is young. Well, actually, and you just said that. I'm kind of, hang on. If they're young and emotionally literate or illiterate, you can be emotionally literate guy or gal who's done 40 years in human services. You do the same mistakes over and over again, but you say you're experienced. That's not
Right.
experience. That's stupidity. That's dumb. And you
Yeah.
see a lot of people like that. One word though from this, and it's a word of warning. I hate some of the negative language around this. I loathe the word burnout. And
Yeah.
think about it.
Yes.
Go up to someone and say, "Excuse me, how burnt out are you?" "Well, I'm kind of moderately burnt out at the moment."
Yeah.
It's a negative construct, right? And I think it's become part of the thing now that people say, "Well, I'm burning out." Well, hang on, you're 19, you're doing the job, you're burning out. The
Yeah.
idea behind it is that we've got this opportunity to move away from the past here. I mean, even some of the apps on, I've said this technology is bad. It can be very good when you use technology to regulate your behavior. Or look, I got one of these damn watch at the moment. Let's look at that. Oh, yeah, it says I'm dead. It says 67 beats a minute. That's okay, isn't
You're
it?
doing
That's all
well.
right. Yeah. Is that a good or a bad number? I'm doing okay.
You,
But the point about this stuff is you can get people to check themselves out with technology now to say, look, am I stressed? Am I not stressed? Yeah.
right.
Even in the future, my cortisol level is high. How can I bring that down? By the way, to the audience, the only one evidence-based way to bring cortisol down consistently, I'm afraid, is cardiac exercise. And it's not
Yes.
like loafing around. It's burst cardio.
Yeah.
And it takes many months. If you're highly stressed, chronically stressed over the years, and want to do one intervention over, say, a year to improve your sleep, exercise. And this nonsense, last tip for people, if you exercise late at night, it'll keep you awake. If you exercise late at night because you can't sleep, it helps switch on that body clock system, the circadian
Parasympathetic
rhythm
nervous
to go
system.
to sleep.
Yes.
So, you know, or as a friend of mine said recently, yeah, and you try going out in some cities at what you're saying, 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, I didn't say every place, right? There are plenty of places I wouldn't, but this idea, and it is true. I mean, it's not pejorative again, basically, we only had proper lighting in homes for the last 100 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Electric light bulbs. Before that, we had candles. Before that, we got up when it was light and we went to bed when it was dark because actually our bodies switched off.
Yes.
So biologically now we have a workforce that struggles to do that. And again, I'm not saying let's go back to the caves. You know, people say, well, wasn't it easier in the old days? Yeah, when you died, what, about the age of 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't
Yeah.
think that was great.
Right. Right.
What
Nobody
we've got to
talks
do
about
is get the
that. Yeah.
understanding that we're doing, we're we're overstimulating our brains, and we know we are. You know, so uh, all I'm saying is this thing here, just give yourself a break from it from time to time. Yeah, you know,
So
just
beautiful, Andy.
have a
You've
see how
you've laid.
long to anyone doing this. To anyone doing this, see how long you can go without looking at your phone, and it's a test for you. There's not a right or wrong number, but some people listen to this might scare themselves in the process. Right? Swipe,
My
swipe.
favorite
You're
part of
feeding your
any
brain with short-term stuff that has a biochemical response.
Andy,
Go
my
on, I'll shut up.
favorite part of a cruise is the fact that I can put that thing up for days. I feel so relieved when I'm away from it.
Yeah,
The device, you know, and
yeah.
your message today was, I think, so needed. I thank you so much for the humor and the grace that you just
No,
so
thank you.
naturally present. Where can people learn more about you and your team and your work?
Yeah,
Did you
you
get?
can find it. It's our website, www.studio3.org. There's quite a lot of information. I will put it in www.studio3.org. We have a lot of information on our website. Um, there's quite a lot of literature. I think there's the study on stress and well-being that Daniel Rippon did in 2020. I will make sure that we make that available because it's interesting. I mean, you get this idea, and of course, the low arousal approach. We run webinars like you guys do and seminars, and of course, I think it's no secret we're going to be collaborating more and more our organizations on this.
Yes,
You know, because
yes,
the idea behind it is on the stress and well-being work. Um, that's a bit more complicated. I mean, we do it. I think collectively. I think there's something here about the knowledge that people have about the simple practical skills. Yeah. You have debriefing on training, but actually checking out people to say, look, you need to leave here today. I'm trying to convince you with one or two coping skills that you could do. If it's playing computer games until your brain switches off, fine. Don't think that's bad. If it's running, if it's reading a book,
right.
if it's switching your phone off for just even a few hours, and I think the information's out there in the space. People can always contact you, or they can contact my organization if they've got any inquiries or anything they want
Yes,
to know about. We're
yes,
international like you. I think it's been nice, this collaboration. I'll say it now for lots of reasons, because actually, yeah, you started with a brother from another mother. I think it's actually, you find a lot of kindred spirits in this work.
you
And
do. You certainly
I
do.
and we talked about maybe writing a book on this area. I think a practical book I think is probably needed, but the self-help book that we'd be involved in is much more about that in the moment
Yes,
blind terror and how we can reduce that. And I
absolutely.
think so. I'd say there's lots on that. I think we've just, good news for you, we're about to release our podcast, and thank you, Andy, for participating in it. I mean, it's
Oh, okay.
taken us
The
a month.
human hour, or
Yeah,
what's the?
well, no, it's now going to be called Reflection into Action. Okay, we had a lot
Okay,
of soul
okay,
searching, so it's actually going to
okay.
be called because reflective practice is the cornerstone of what we do. It kind of popped out
I
eventually.
love
With
it. I love it.
let's
Yeah.
call it reflection into action, and that's also an acknowledgement, like we're doing today, that people are in this social media where they actually do watch podcasts and YouTube and listen to them in the car, and we have to move on. So actually fairly soon, Andy. Okay, onto the realms of that. But for me, that's where the source is disaster. So, but it's nearly 11:30 UK time.
Yeah, off you go.
Yeah. Better
There'll
go
be
out for my
a
power walk
video
now.
playing. Yes, there'll be a video playing as we end our discussion. Andy, thank you so much, Dr. Andy McDonnell, Studio 3.
Thank you.